back to my channel and to my first sit down video in what feels like forever on my own. I haven't filmed a sit down video in over a month, and even that one was with other people, so I haven't sat down and filmed a video on my own for so long. But I no longer do the videos I used to do on this channel, in case you haven't noticed. All my wrap-ups now go over on my blog, which is always linked below, because I just feel like I get my thoughts across better and more articulate when I can sit there and think about what I've said. But I have missed more than anything just chatting about books. So I thought that a really great thing to do would be, instead of give you all my opinions twice, you can go over there and see every book I've read every month. But I would start doing my favourite recent reads, so books I've read recently that I've loved and think you should read too, because those books are the ones that we should be talking about more and that I want to talk about with you guys, because I seem to dislike a lot of books. My channel can be quite negative sometimes, so it's really nice to have videos that just consist of books I've really enjoyed. Again, it's been a long time since my last wrap up on this channel, I believe since February. It is now September. I can't talk about every 4-star book or every book I've really enjoyed because there's just so many. Even here, there's a ridiculous pile. So I'm just going to talk about the ones that stood out to me that I was like, right, I want to say something. And some of them are so old that I might not have a lot to say, but I want to mention them and say how good they are. So we're just going to dive in, and in no particular order as well. I know we said no particular order, but I am going to start with my most recent read that I finished, and that is These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. This book delivered. So it was compared to The Selection, The Cruel Prince, and Akatar. All series that I have given the books 5 stars to. So I was like, hang on now, this is going to be my favourite book. Absolutely, positively. I got an ARC, but then I realised that this was coming in our fairy loot box, so I was like, I'm going to wait and read it. Wow. I read it, I loved it, I gave it 4 stars, and I will tell you why it wasn't a 5, because it was close. This book is so good. So we follow Bree, who lives in the human world and hates Fae. She doesn't like the Fae world, she doesn't want to be there, she doesn't like magic. She just thinks that these people are evil, because, you know, Fae usually are evil. And then one day her sister is kidnapped by the Unseelie court, and so she is forced basically to go to the Fae world if she would like to save her sister. When she gets to the Unseelie court in order to save her sister, the Unseelie king makes a deal with her that he will give her sister back to her if she gathers 3 items that he wants that the Seelie queen stole from him. She agrees, of course, because it's her only option. So to get access to the Seelie court that she would need access to gather these relics, she must pose to as a partner, as a potential partner. It's like The Selection, where there's like 12 girls that stay in the castle trying to compete for the prince's affection and to be the wife of said prince. And so she has to fake her way as one of these girls to have access to the Seelie court castle and therefore the relics. It's very interesting, and that honestly is just a tiny part of the plot. There's so much more to this story. I feel like recently the YA/NA category of Fae fantasy is just blowing me away. I've got another book to talk about that is very similar to this, and that is The Prison Healer. I think they are very similar vibes, and I'm going to be talking about that later on, because that's another book that I think just knocked it out of the park recently. But if you are a fan of this kind of fantasy, this is the one for you. This, as much as it is NA, has not got much spice in it. Well, it's got none. It's got no spice in it. But I'm hoping for future books. Just don't be lied to by TikTok, which tells you this has spice. It does not. I will say the one reason it wasn't a 5-star is due to the fact that the character development was iffy for me. I feel like Bree was really well developed, and Sebastian as well was a really well developed character who I really enjoyed reading about. But we have side characters in this book, such as Finn, who is basically a Rhysand copy. Let me just show you. Look at that man. That man is Rhysand, which I love. I approve. But yeah, he could have done with a lot more development, because he was probably my favourite character in this book and yet still was underdeveloped. And I feel like if we'd seen more, Outstanding would have been a 5 out of 5. But every single one of the side characters was lacking in some way that made me feel like a real true story. You know what I mean? So yeah, this book, incredible, really enjoyed it, highly recommend to everybody. if you've liked books like Cruel Prince, Selection, Akatar, The Prison Healer and stuff like that. Let me know what you think of this one, because I know it's a new release and it's, in my opinion, very, very good. As I already mentioned it, I'm just going to go straight on to The Prison Healer and talk about it, as I've already mentioned it. This is also going to include The Gilded Cage, which is the sequel book, and I was lucky enough to get an arc of that as well, so we're going to talk about both. These books are so good. I think I gave this one a 4, and the sequel a 4 as well, but a higher 4, you know? In this one, we see Kiva, who is actually living in the prison, and Zalindorf is basically known as like the death prison. Like, people don't live there very long. You are put to labor so much that your body basically gives up on you. There's not that much care there for people. And Kiva is unfortunately there after the death of her father, where she took over his position as the prison healer. So her life is a little bit comfier in this prison than most, but it's not exactly great. One day, somebody comes in and there is a note from her family, which they send a lot of like cryptic notes in people, like not in people, like in their shoes and stuff, hidden for her in the prison. And somebody comes in, and she is the rebel queen who is fighting against the monarchy of the city, and she is told that she is to keep her alive at all costs. The only problem is this rebel queen is being set to face the 3 impossible trials, which are what they sound like, 3 impossible trials. She will die. So we see Kiva take on this very much impossible task for the queen, because she has to keep her alive and the queen is unconscious and cannot do it herself. But if Kiva fails, they both die, and if Kiva wins, they both get freedom. Again, like I said about these hollow vows, that is very much a one bit of the plot. It is the main plot, but there's just so much going on around it. There's a romance in here as well. Honestly, the whole thing is chaos. This one just sets up so much world building and so much of the monarchy and the political systems and the magic system, which I adore in this. Unlike this one, the side characters are honestly put to perfection, if not more than the protagonists. I feel like the protagonists in this book are annoying and whiny, whereas every side character is my favourite person on the planet. So this counts for The Gilded Cage as well. There is even better characters in that book. It's amazing. So yeah, if you haven't picked this up, I highly recommend. It's kind of hard to talk about without spoilers, because the book just takes a lot of twists and turns that you wouldn't expect, so I don't want to talk about them. But yes, I adore this. Taking a little step away from fantasy at the moment, even though that is my favourite genre, I'm going to talk about As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. Now, this is the 3rd book in the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. There is 3 books and a novella in this series. It is the first series that I've given every single book a 5-star to, including the novella. This series is incredible. Holly Jackson is just so talented. It is a YA thriller, but as the books go on, they do get darker. Like, I do feel like this one was very dark for YA. Obviously, I can't give the synopsis of this particular book because it is the 3rd in the series, but the entire series revolves around Pip, who she has to do this project for college, and she decides to go and reignite the case of Andy, who went missing and I think was found dead. I can't remember. She went missing and it was found that her boyfriend killed her. That was what they decided. But before her boyfriend could be arrested, he hung himself, which they did consider an admission of. So she thinks something's up with this case and not everything is as it seems, and she doesn't believe that the boyfriend was guilty. That is the basis of the first book, and although that is solved in the first book, it still goes on for another 2, and they're just so good. The second book is revolving around like another disappearance, and then this book is following stalking. It's just so good. If you have not read this series before, even if you are not a thriller fan, I would highly recommend it. It's like a mix of murder mystery and thriller. It's too scary for my opinion to be called a murder mystery, but it has that vibe to it. It also has multimedia inside of it, which makes it very easy to read and also feels like you're like investigating alongside the story. I also really enjoy the fact that the book does give you hints as to what is happening. So you can work it out as you go, but I don't think you ever will. I don't know anyone who's ever worked it out, because it is mind-boggling how clever Holly Jackson is. Things that we uncovered in this book were set up in the first book so subtly that I would never expect it to have come back around. Amazing, impeccable, amazing writing style. Could I come up with any more words? I do not know. This one is a chonker, and I was very confused as to why it was this big when the first book was just like, the typical 350 pages. Worth every second. I flew through this. I love it. If you've not picked it up yet, whether you've read the past books in the series or not, just do it. Just pick up the series, pick up this book, whatever. Read it now. I won't have any excuses. Again, something I read quite a while back now, I think in April, and an obvious favourite is Heartstopper Volume 4. I got this the day it released, and I read it the day it released in one sitting. Wow, Nick and Charlie. I'm sure no one needs to know what this is about. Everybody seems to love it. We follow Nick and Charlie, who are uncovering their sexuality. There's a romance blossoms. They uncover so much more of their lives and who they are. This volume especially handles some really dark topics that can be handled in the wrong way and can be quite triggering, but I think Alice Oseman does such a good job at being respectful about these things and talking about them in a way that is realistic. I know that in a lot of books it can be like, oh, you're depressed, but you're in a good relationship. Boom, fixed. That's not how it works. It also doesn't mean you have a bad partner just because they haven't got rid of your depression. Like, that's ridiculous. If only it was that easy, but it is not. And I love that this book doesn't glorify that. It does, it literally focuses on the point of a good relationship doesn't mean good mental health. The next volume, number 5, is the last one. I can't talk about it because it actually gets me emotional. Like, I'm not ready to say goodbye to Nick and Charlie. I want them to go on forever. I want volume 30. I want to be in my 50s reading about Nick and Charlie. The next book is actually quite surprising for me because I don't read historical fiction, but it is City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. This story is really something different. It's kind of like Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo vibes, but younger, like if you were following a teenager, because we are. So we see Vivian, who is not kicked out of her house, or maybe she goes to live with her auntie, who runs this theatre group, or she actually owns a theatre. They're a bit of a dysfunctional group, but I think they're fabulous. So at Aunt Peg's playhouse, there is this showgirl called Celia, and Vivian and Celia start to get along really well. It's kind of like a sheep situation where Vivian will just follow Celia wherever she goes. She thinks she's magical. She doesn't understand why Celia speaks to her. She wants to be exactly like Celia. So we follow Vivian through her experiences in New York, becoming a young woman from being a teenager. She experiences a lot of experiences for a teenager and / young woman. I think that she is a fabulous character to have followed in regards to the fact that she is very sex positive. This entire book is very sex positive, especially in the way of you don't need to be with one person for the rest of your life. You can be happy and single if you want to be happy and single. And I love that message in this book. It is not something I've read about a lot, and I feel like it's a very important message for people to be reading, because we don't need romances. We need happiness. That's what we need. I say after talking about 4 books with romances in them. Great. It's kind of hard to say much about this book again because it's not a plot-driven book. It is purely you follow Vivian. It's very character-driven all the way through the story. We're just seeing more of Vivian and her experiences and her time in New York. But I really loved seeing New York through her eyes. It's also set during the war, so we start to see a little bit of what happens to New York during the war and the aftermath and the effects of what goes alongside that, which was very, very interesting. Again, I don't read historical fiction, so it was kind of nice to experience it without having to read a book I dislike, if that makes sense. I recommend this book especially if you enjoyed Evelyn Hugo and you would like to see something like that. They're not exactly the same, but similar vibes. Okay, I'm going to talk about a really hyped one. I'm just going to talk about it real quick because no one needs to hear that much about it. And that is A Coat of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J Maas. We do not need to talk about this too much. Everybody has read this, and if you haven't, you probably have no interest. So I don't really need to speak about it too much. As you can see, it's very much my style, these fantasy romance books. I loved Akawa. I gave it a 5 stars. Oh, I should probably give you my ratings for these, shouldn't I? because I haven't been. 4.5, 5, 5, 4 and 4, I think. This one was a 5 for sure. I do not know why people don't like this. For me, the perfect book would be the second half of Akamath and the first half of Akawar put into one book, because those two were amazing. This started off as like a 10 out of 5 star. I loved it. But the second half was just, you know, it was great. I still gave it, you know, still 5-star worthy. But it was like the first half of Akamath vibes for me that I didn't love. But again, I just love these characters so much. This is just like my favourite genre, fantasy romance, but new adult instead of being a young adult. So we actually get like a more appropriate for my age range, I feel. This is just the perfect series for me. I have nothing bad to say about it. I really do love it. I know that it, you know, for a lot of people, they don't understand the hype, and that's perfectly fine. I get it. I love it. I will forever love these characters. Azriel is the best character and is my book boyfriend. I love him so much, and this book just made me love him even more. I will not hear a bad word about Azriel, but I'm not going to talk any more about it because there's literally no need. Everybody talks about the series. We do not have many left to talk about. Do not worry. I know I'm not being that in-depth with these. I did pick up my first Mary H.K. Choi book, and that is Yolk. This was a really hard book for me to pick up because it revolves around cancer, which is something I have been affected by and I do not enjoy reading about, but I didn't know about that before I started it and before I bought it. I just heard that it was really good with really beautiful writing and the cover's really cool. I don't regret it. This was a 5-star read. This was bleak is the only way to describe it, you know. It's not an easy read. It is a depressing read. I didn't fly through it at all. I actually got through it quite slowly because it was taking so much emotion from me and it was exhausting to read. But these two characters are so fascinating to me. We follow June as our protagonist, and she lives this very poor life. You know, she doesn't exactly respect herself that much. She thinks she's a bit of a waste of space. She has this horrible boyfriend who just, it's not even a boyfriend, he's just like this guy who knows she loves him and will use that to his advantage, but will then bring other women home to her house that he is like living in but without paying for living in. Do you know what I mean? He's a deadbeat. I hate him. And then Jane, his sister, is the complete opposite. She is rich. She lives in this penthouse apartment. She is a workaholic, and they don't really speak. But Jane, when she finds out she has cancer, obviously tries to reunite this relationship with June. But it isn't all roses and daisies, is that the saying? You know, they really struggle to get along together. It's not easy for them. They are complete opposite people. They don't like each other. They've got a lot of history. There is a lot of flaws in these characters. You know, both of them are very dislikable. I can see why each other don't like the other, but it's really nice to see the family bonds that keep people together and the fact that they knew the relationship together was worth fighting for. It was just such a truly beautiful story. Mary H.K. Choi's writing style as well is not like anything I've ever read before. It kind of feels like Sally Rooney, but a bit more mainstream. Like Sally Rooney's a little bit out there, whereas this one's not quite as out there, but does have that quirkiness to it. Very lovely, very different to what I think her other books are about. I own both of them and they seem to be romances. That is not what this is. It is more about, instead of being a romance, it's more about like falling in love with yourself and repairing yourself. I'm going to talk about a series as a whole for the next one that I've read so far anyway, and that is Zodiac Academy by Caroline Peckham and Susan Valenti. Oh, this book series. I am on book 4 of this series. This is book 1. I'm just showing you book 1 because it's the one I own. This is not the best one in the series. But wow, this series. This is incredible. If you are a massive fan of Harry Potter, and you're looking for something to like fill that void of you've read Harry Potter and you're done with it, or you're done with it because gross J.K. Rowling like me, then you will want to pick this up. This is like a new adult version. If Voldemort, this is literally what it says in the back, if Voldemort had won the war in Harry Potter and had taken over Hogwarts, this is what it would be. It's like this evil place but like this place that also feels like home to me now. Oh, I love this series so much. This first book was a 3.5, but the rest of the books have been 4s, 4.5s. You know, they are so good. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with them. There is a lot of things wrong with them, but you don't care because they're so good. You know what I mean? We follow Tori and Darcy Vega, who live on their own in the human world. They know nothing about, you know, fairies or fae or whatever. They don't know anything about magic, basically. And they're very poor. They are stealing, I think it's Tori. Tori is stealing motorbikes to make money to live. And then one day, a professor from Zodiac Academy, Orion, turns up, bangs down their door, kidnaps them basically, telling them that they are the long-lost heirs of the royalty of the Fae magic world. Yeah, it's a lot. So they are like, you're talking out your arse, but they do go because they haven't really got a choice. It's kind of like a kidnapping. And it's not like they have a better world, whereas they're told, over in this world, you're rich, you will get all of the money, all of the land, if you just attend Zodiac Academy and stay there until you graduate. So they're like, I mean, if you're not lying to me, I'll do it, you know, sounds great, let's go. The only issue is that because they are the long lost heirs, other people have taken over, and the people who are the heir to the throne currently are 5 boys, known as the heirs. This is a bully romance, just to warn you, and it's more prominent in the first book than the rest. But the bullying in the first book ain't it. Like, I really didn't like it. It's why I got a 3.5. It's very hard for me to like a bully romance. It's not my favourite thing. In the books onwards, you get to see the boys' POVs, and that helps a lot, let me assure you. So I have fallen in love with them since then. But by this point, I did not like them. But they are, some of them are still horrible. But some of them are really, really nice, and you do root for them. I have no idea where the series is going. 6 out of the 8 books are written right now, and there is a prequel, which I do have, I just haven't read it, and like a short story collection, short story as well, which I don't know where that's set, but yeah, that's what's written. So we haven't finished the series yet, and I binged through 4 books in 3 days, and so I was like, hang on, now I need to stop. So the fact that number 7 comes out on December 18th, so I'm trying to like pace myself with the last 2 books that I have before I have nothing left. This series just feels like home to me now. It has taken over my life. Like, while reading it, I was dreaming about it. I was reading it every second of every day. Like, I've literally had to slow myself down because I don't know how I'll cope. I will definitely be rereading. These are self-published, so they're kind of expensive to buy. But they're all on Kindle Unlimited if you have that. So that's how I read them. And then realised I needed a physical copy anyway because, beautiful. Thank you, Connor, for my copy of this one. I love it so much. So good. I know that it's not for everybody, especially with it being a bully romance, but it is so good. It's so good. Oh yes. So yeah, if you're a Harry Potter fan, a Hogwarts fan, you want to be in Hogwarts, you want to live in Hogwarts, you don't mind a darker, you know, side to it, like the teachers turn their eyes away when bullying happens because the heirs have more control over them. You know, they're higher up on the hierarchy than the teachers are. This is the one you want to read. I need you to read it, please. And I need to talk about it. Literally, I'm just like screaming into the void about this book. It's so good. Please pick it up. I'm literally going to speed through these last 2. First of all, we have Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. It's not exactly an underrated book. I think everybody knows and loves this book so much. You know, it has been made into a film. I really enjoyed this. I gave it a 4 stars. This was so good. I was hesitant to pick it up because I thought of it more as a sci-fi, which I mean it kind of is, but no, it's more dystopian, which I adore. Set in the future where the world's kind of gone a bit mad, like, you know, it's not a nice place to be. So this man made up like this virtual reality game, and it's called the Oasis. So you can go there, you can go to school there, there's like unlimited worlds that you can go to. And when he dies, he says that whoever can find the Easter egg set within the Oasis can inherit all of his money, which is a big deal in this world because there's very much a segregation between the rich and the poor, and most people are poor and they're living literally like on the cover. You see those stacks of like caravans on top of each other. They're living like that. So, you know, it's a big deal. Many people are trying to find this Easter egg to inherit the money. One day our protagonist Wade Watts works out the first clue and pops up onto the leaderboard, and from there his life becomes a bit of a whirlwind of people, number one, trying to, you know, get him, because they don't want him to win. Second of all, people then finding out what he's done and copying him, so it kind of becomes a race then. And also seeing his friendships and relationships grow within the Oasis and seeing how this online world is actually something so special. It's not just a game anymore. It has become a way of life for so many people. I think this book not only is just a fabulous book of entertainment, I also feel like it talks a lot about, you know, it has a lot of undertones of societal issues. We definitely see a lot of what it's like for rich people versus the poor people, and how the rich people are happy to treat poor people, which is something I'm very passionate about. You know, I do not approve of some of the ways the poor people are treated. And so this book was very much up my alley when I was reading stuff like that, because I was like, yes, typical. I do feel like the 80s references went over my head because I personally have no interest in that like time period. Like I don't play 80s games, don't really watch 80s movies. I tend to watch like 1940s movies. I don't even know if that's true. High Society, Calamity Jane, you know, they're my favourite kind of movies. Whatever years those are, I don't know. But yeah, 80s is not my thing. So a lot of the references definitely went over my head, but the ones I did catch were really impressive. I think the book's a lot better than the movie. I'm just gonna say it now. And the final book that I have read is Credence by Penelope Douglas. I do not believe I've spoken about this on my channel, but I could be wrong. I have read this 3 times now this year since March. Two of those times were 2 weeks between each other. I adore this book. It is supposed to just be a smut book. I see it as an incredible found family story that's a little bit messed up, but really, really good. Take that as you may. This is not everybody's cup of tea. Please do not just dive into this without knowing anything about it. It is about this girl whose parents commit suicide because they don't really care about her. They have no interest in her. They are so in love with each other that they don't see anything else. They're just terrible people, basically, who are neglected her entire life. So when they kill themselves, she is left with nowhere to turn to, no one to go to, until her uncle, who is like he's like related by marriage to the family, but they've never spoken. They had nothing to do with each other. The families don't like each other. And he says, you know, if you want to come live with me up in the mountains, I live in the middle of nowhere. We are snowed in 6 months of the year. It's a very different life to you down in LA, I think she's in. But you're welcome to come here. You have 2 cousins here. It's just me and my 2 boys. And so she decides, I hate the world. I hate the fact that she's like a celebrity because her parents were famous. I don't want everyone watching me. Everybody's, you know, looking at my whereabouts because of what's happened to me. I'm going to go. And so she goes, and she lives with Uncle Jake. First read, I gave it 4 stars, and then the second 2 reads, I gave it 5. Like, I'm sorry, that's the way. It's a 5-star book. The ending is not, I do not like the ending at all. I did not want the ending to be the way the ending is, which is why it got a 4-star the first time. But I can't judge it on the fact that it was just such a good book and then just take away a star because of the ending. Like, it was so good. I think it was filled with plot. I think I want to say world development, obviously it's based in this world, but like the scenery described and the village and stuff, it was so good. It was like a different way of life that I've never experienced, obviously. I don't mean the family relationships, oh my god. I mean like the seclusion of living in a cabin in like this American town. Obviously I am not American, so I haven't had that experience. I think it shows a lot. We see Tina grow up quite a lot. You know, she goes from being this self-hating person who doesn't show any love to herself and thinks she deserves to be punished just all the time, to this person who really loves herself, and she has found love in the people around her. She has found a family, she has found friends, a place she feels she belongs. And I love this book so much for that reason. Like, it's just such a heartfelt book, which you wouldn't expect from what the book is about, obviously, but I just think there's so much to it, so much plot, so much character development. I think it's very well written. So those are the books that I read recently and rated 4/5 stars. I know this one was a 3.5, but the series in general that I think you should definitely read if you're going to read any of my recommendations recently. I'm going to try and do this more often so that I'm not giving you so many at once, because I know this is a long video. But if you would like this like every maybe 2 months, let me know. And again, if you're interested in seeing all of my opinions on not only these books, where I have dedicated reviews, if you would like to see more of these videos where I just show you my favourite reads recently, let me know. I'd be happy to do them. I think this was a lot of fun, and I shall see you on the next video. Bye!